Hi, this is Chris Nielsen with Breaking Up with Fear. I'm excited to have Tanya Taylor with me today, and she's going to share a story about a fear she broke up with. Thank you for being with me, Tanya.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Absolutely. So that story we were talking about just before, you grew up, where did you grow up? Where were you born?
So I was born in Jamaica,
Okay.
beautiful island of Jamaica.
And how did you end up, and where are you now?
So I live in New York. I've been living here for, this is going to be 32 years.
Wow.
So I'm kind of giving my age away at this point.
So how did you get from Jamaica to that story we were talking about earlier?
So the short of it is, so I grew up very poor. My parents had 6 of us, and I had just graduated high school, and they weren't really sure like how they would be able to afford for all of us to go to school. It was very expensive. Again, we were really poor. And so I got the opportunity to move to America. And so they were able to find a family to host me while I was here, with the goal of me going to college and sort of changing my life. So at 16, I left my entire family and I came here and moved to New York.
So how that had to feel at 16, that would have felt really scary to me. Even to move to another city with a whole different family. How did that feel to you, and what made you go do that? Were you pushed into it, or did you want to do it, or what was going on in your mind?
So I definitely wasn't pushed into it. It was something that I wanted to do because, so what happens in Jamaica, like if you graduate school, like literally a lot of us don't have anything. So you have all these very bright people, teenagers who graduate and there's no jobs. And so it was always my hope, my goal, or my manifestation. I literally would dream that I moved to somewhere else and I'm able to help my family. So my goal, once my parents was able to find this opportunity for me to come to America, it was like almost like a free ticket for me. Like, oh my God, I had this opportunity. So for me, the fear didn't even come into my mind because I was just thinking, I have this opportunity to go to America. I can help my family and I can change the trajectory of my life. And so that was my focus when I came here. It was just like, how can I change the trajectory of my life?
I love that. So what was in front of you was so beautiful looking and rewarding potentially that it overrode any fear you had in that situation.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. So then what happened next with this family?
So then I moved in with the family and they took me, I'm going to put in quotes, as their daughter. So they said I was like a daughter to the family. They had younger children. And so they had a small apartment. So I was sharing room with with the 2 boys actually. And once I got a job, I was required to give them like a part of the money that I was earning to help with the household, which was totally fine. I understood that. And eventually I started going back to school. My goal was to go to college, but at the time, all sort of technicalities, I wasn't able to go to college immediately. Part of it was also because I was 16 and I was coming from Jamaica. So I went to high school for a while and that gave me the opportunity to save for college. So for the year and a half that I was in high school, I saved as much money as I can. So I was making like $75 per week and I would send money back home to my family in Jamaica. I would pay this host family weekly and whatever I had left, I saved up for college. And I ended up going through junior college, paying for it on my own. I went from making $75 a week to $140 a week. So now that additional money I was making, all of it went into savings. So I was able to save and pay my way through college. And then when I graduated from college, I couldn't find a job. And so the only job I could find was being a babysitter on the Upper West Side of Manhattan with the wealthy people. And so I was living in someone's basement. I was making $200 per week, but I was living there. So essentially I saved all my money again. I really, one of the things that I noticed when I came here was that people were just living paycheck to paycheck. And you know, when you're in Jamaica and you hear about America, it just seems like the land of abundance and people have so much, but I realized that that was not the case. And so for me, one of the things that I really said to myself was, I need to change that for myself because I don't want to be poor, to be quite frank. I just didn't want to be
poor. So you were, what were you, 18, 19 years old at this time?
So by that time I was 21.
21, and you could see the trajectory of other people. And you go, I don't want to do that.
no.
I want to do this because this could get me somewhere else. So
Yeah, that was very clear to me that I did not want to go the path. I remember so I wanted to be an accountant, and I think that I had that vision from Jamaica. And I remember even when I came here, and sometimes I couldn't find jobs, and people would say to me, why don't you come and do this? And I didn't want to go that route because I just had a longer term vision. And so I kept that in mind. So even while I was a babysitter, so now I had my accounting degree from the 2-year college, but I knew that wouldn't get me very far. So while I was a babysitter, I kept saving again to go on to get my bachelor's degree, which I ended up getting. And in the meantime, I also took a course which would allow me to, so I went from being a babysitter to working at Goldman Sachs on their mergers and acquisition floor within 2 years. And then I started going back to school as well to get my bachelor's degree.
That's great.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so in between that though, so by the time I was 25, so then I was going to school, I was getting my bachelor's, I was saving all my money. I saved as much money as I can. So my next step was to purchase a property. When I wasn't babysitting, living with those family, I was still living in this apartment with a family, sharing a room with the 2 boys. So, one of the boys, he caused me so much pain. He stole my things, he destroyed everything. It was a very toxic situation. Plus, by that time, I'm like, okay, I'm old enough now, I can go off on my own. If you have a child, that's what you expect your child to do. So I remember one night I came home. At the time I was still a babysitter, I think. Yeah, and I had just bought a brand new computer, and that's where I was learning. The course I was taking, I was using the computer, and he completely destroyed the computer.
Ooh.
I could no longer use the computer. I had borrowed the money to buy the computer. And I had been so stressed. So I said to the family, I think I'm going to move. I'm going to give you some time. I just want to let you know that I'm going to move. And they said to me, you're the most ungrateful person that I've ever met. We would never help anybody again because we helped you, and now you're just leaving. And they had seen literally the turmoil I was going through. Plus I was living in a room with 2 boys in my 20s. So, but psychologically, that did something for me. I felt a sense of guilt and obligation. And after that conversation, I kind of went to myself, oh my God, I cannot move. I have to stay because these people have been so good to me. Forget about all the stuff that's happening to me. I have to stay. And so I committed to staying. So as time went on, I was like, okay, we need to do something. So they had been trying to purchase a home for a very long time, and they'd been having no success. So as someone that I would call my advisor, someone I would talk to about things, he suggested that I buy a house with this family. I never told them all of the pain that was being caused by them.
Right.
So I kind of went along because now I felt like I couldn't move, so that would be the best compromise for me. He said, buy a house, multifamily, you could live in one area, rent a part out so you could get the income, because he knew my dream.
Yeah.
To not be poor, and the family could live in one section. So I went along, and we decided to buy this house. We spent a year looking for this house. We got ready to buy the house, and when we went to sign the contract, they had no money and they had no credit. So so they had nothing. So I ended up buying the house on my own because by then I had saved enough money. So I bought the house.
Well, congratulations on buying a house. Yeah.
Thank you. And I was 25.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, too, I had also started a business with my aunt. I call her my aunt, but also the woman that I lived with started a business. And so we had the business, which I contribute almost half to, and we moved into the house. Literally, I bought the house. I sometimes say we because psychologically I'm still messed up by this. And they moved in and they took the house over. So I told my mom I bought the house, and they were upset that I told my mom. They said I shouldn't tell anyone because they don't want people to know their business. I'm just thinking, but this is my house. But they literally moved in the house and they took it over. Fine. They didn't pay their bills. So from the jump, bills are not getting paid, so I have to pay the bills. And over time, it just started to become so much that it was just like, the expenses is too high for me. I never had debt. I ended up incurring thousands of dollars of debt trying to pay the bills that they weren't paying. And they lived a lifestyle of, I guess, keeping up with the Joneses. So everything had to be nice and fancy and all of that stuff, but they couldn't pay their bills. And this went on for many years where
How many years?
Okay, so in total 20. So
Whoa.
in total 20. My husband, so I ended up getting married. I moved out of the house and they were still living there, not paying their bills. So now I'm paying bills with my husband and I'm paying bills for that house as well.
You were paying bills. You were covering their living.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. And my credit kept getting ruined. So then my goal was I was going to use this house and buy additional properties. I wasn't able to do that because every time I would try to get everything in place, put everything in place, they would not pay their bill again. I became depressed. I forget, like, or sometimes I just don't have enough money to pay their bills and my bills. So my credit kept getting ruined. Long story short, this happened for over a long period of time. I started going to therapy and my therapist just sort of said, you have to get these people out of your life. They're literally going to kill you. And I would go to the doctor and it was sort of funny because every time I go to the doctor would say, there's something in your life that's stressing you. So I had a herbal doctor and a regular medical doctor.
Yeah.
And I had this irritable bowel syndrome. And my doctor told me, they were like, this is stress related. So I would go to the doctor and the doctor would say, there's something in your life that's stressing you. You have to get rid of this stress. And I would change all this thing in my life and I would go back and I'm like, yes, I have to have gotten rid of this stress. And I would go back and they're like, your stress level you still have the same amount of stress, especially the herbal doctor, like he would do this test. So there's like something deep within that you need to get rid of. And I would go to therapy. My therapist would tell me the same thing, but I was so afraid because the thing that kept playing over and over in my head was you're so ungrateful, we helped you, and you just are leaving us. And so I couldn't say to them, like, you need to pay your bills. Occasionally I would write them letters and then they would want to meet with me to talk about it. But every time I would talk to them, I would walk away feeling like I gave away more of my power than when I didn't talk to them. So it got to a point where I actually started avoiding them. I just would not go there. I would just check the bills and I would pay them. And during the periods when I went through depression, I just didn't pay. Or the other extreme is that every month I would just transfer money from my savings account and just pay the bills and not say anything to them. So in the
you were
end,
living at a different place and paying
yes, my husband and I were living together at that point in time,
at this place,
at a different house.
So how did this come to ending with that?
So I finally got the courage. My therapist was like, you have to do it. So I finally got the courage and I went to them one day and I said, I need my house back and I need you guys to pay me all my money. By then they owed me probably about $25,000. I can't remember the number at this point in time. So I told them this and they said, oh, we're planning to retire. So can you give us 3 more years? And of course I walked away again going, okay, 3 more years. But at least in my mind, I know. No, but in my mind, I was like, okay, at least in 3 years, they're going to be gone.
I get it a little bit though, too, man. Not to that extreme. I own some properties and I bought every excuse almost that they told me. And I was so sorry that they were going through difficult times. So continue your story. Sorry.
Yeah. So then 3 years came and I was like, okay, you guys promised that you're going to leave. And they just had no plans to leave. So now it became now another point that I didn't mention is at some point when they kept borrowing on the house too. And I would just go along with it. Yeah.
How did they borrow on the house?
So they would just call me and they would say, we need to do this. Like they were building a house in Jamaica. We need some money for the house in Jamaica. Can we borrow some money? Every time we remortgage a house at least 8 or 9 times.
But wasn't your name wasn't on the deed?
My name was on the house initially. And one day I went into the closing because they would just call me. They knew people and they would just say, okay, we want to borrow. So they'll say, we'll take care of it. So I literally just need to go and sign. And one day I went in to go and sign, and they gave me the title to sign. And I was like, well, why am I signing the deed? And the guy who helped to put together the mortgage was also their tax guy. And he said, well, they can't deduct the interest on the mortgage, so we need to add them to the title because they were never able to get added to the
Did
mortgage.
you
Because
add
they
them
have
to the
bad credit.
title?
So I signed over half of my house to them.
Oh. All right.
Yeah.
So how did you get out of this?
So I got out of it by taking them, literally I said I was going to take them to court, because when the time came for them to move, they decided that they weren't going to move. And I got family members involved. I started to get attorneys involved. And I guess between family members doing moral suasion, I was able to get them to sign my house over back to me 3 years ago. So it took me 20 years to get my house back.
So your family stepped up for you as well to help convince them that they'd done wrong, which they obviously could tell they did.
Not just my family, but also his family.
Oh, okay.
Well. Yeah, like I was very close to them as well. And when they found out all the details, they knew some things. I never talked about it much. So when they found out all the details, they were like, you have to give her house back and pay her money back. So eventually they were able to give me my house back. I never got all the money back that they owed me, and I never will get it back. And honestly, I got my house back. I said, give me back my house and give me back my life. And I just completely cut them off at that point in time, because even during that period of time, the level of stress that I went through and just the things that they did, it was so much that even if there was a point that I would say, okay, I will continue the relationship, I realized that it was so toxic to my system that I could not even continue the relationship. And so after that, I just literally cut them off and just sort of just moved on with my life. And they were living there for a while because they asked if they could rent. And I also just said, no, you cannot rent anymore. Okay. You have to leave. So within about a year after they actually gave me back title to my house, I gave them notice and I said, you have to leave because it causes me too much stress. And I went to the doctor a couple months later to my usual checkup and all of this stuff. And the doctor was like, well, within about 6 months, they were like, you don't have that stress anymore. It was like so incredible. Like I could not believe it. Had I not experienced it, I probably would be like, no. But yeah, the doctor was just like, no, you're fine. I had so many medical issues as a result of this. It's all gone.
Thank you for sharing that incredible story. So how did you, I mean, you obviously had the guilt shame stuff happening, that they guilted you in the beginning, and that, it seems like that stayed the whole length of your story, right?
It did.
So how did you finally break up with the fear of that to get them out and involve your family in it? What were you thinking, or what happened?
I think when I got to that the third year, when they said that they would move out, so I had goals for myself too, where I was like, by the time I get to this age, I want to have accomplished this. So I was looking down the line and thinking, I have not accomplished so many of the things that I wanted to accomplish. In addition to that, it's just time. Like, I feel like I had just gotten to that point where it's just time. I just really need to move on with my life. And I think that's how I overcame it with a lot of therapy too. Like I went to so much therapy, and my therapist just kept saying, no, you have to do this because you have your children that are going to be going to college. You need to save for them. You need to do all of this other stuff. Now on the side, like, I continued to be a big saver, and I found other ways. So I invested in the stock market, which worked out really well. But my goals of owning all these properties just did not mature, and I felt like I don't want to be working till I'm 65. So at some point you get to that point where you're just like, these people don't care. One of the main things that pushed me though was, I remember the husband saying to me, he called me up, and they would call me up and they would say mean things to me sometimes, and he called me up and he said very mean things to me, and I remember crying, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I took that voicemail and I just sent it to the entire family, mine and his. And I said, this is what I've been dealing with for the past X years. I just want you guys to know that, and I am not going to deal with it anymore. I'm getting all teary-eyed now. And I just said, I just want you guys to know that these are the things I've been dealing with, and I'm just not going to do it anymore. And I just need my house, I need my peace, and I need my life, because I haven't even had a chance to truly spend my life with my husband, because my life has been sort of halfway between my husband and them dealing with all of this.
How did he deal with all this stuff as it was going on?
For my husband, I mean, he's such a great guy. Like, I don't know if I could have gone through all of this with someone else. So
Yeah.
he was a good person to have gone through it with. So, there were times that I would say, can we meet and talk with them? And he also kind of had a bit of that conflict too, because he's like, well, you're very close to them. And because there was like that, almost like a victim, I don't know what's the right word for it, but like you're being victimized by someone, but you're still sort of in this relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like how you have those abused women. Like I could totally understand their story because it was the same thing with me, where I would go back even though I know I shouldn't. And so my husband was kind of conflicted sometime, where he was like, well, can I really go talk to them, because you're still like friends with these people, so then it makes me look like I'm instigating things. But overall, like he tried to support as much as he could. Whenever my bills were late because I was paying their bills, he would get upset, but like sometimes he would just try to understand.
Well, he sounds incredible. and,
It's great.
and I have to say, you sound like you have an incredibly big heart to deal with that all the time. And but here you didn't take care of yourself in the process. Yeah.
I didn't. And I think if that's one of the big lessons that I learned, like looking back, because sometimes you can't see things when you're going through it, but when you look back, I just think like, wow, I gave up so much of my voice, and I gave up so much of just even my dreams and just taking care of myself. And I didn't do any of that because I was trying not to make these people mad at me for being ungrateful, when truly there was so much that I did for them that I guess I just didn't realize, or they couldn't realize, because they were so absorbed in the fact that I owed them, like I literally owed them my entire life. And I had to come to that realization that I don't owe them. I am grateful to them, and that is enough. And that's a lot of what they're.
How did that happen? How did you make the switch from thinking you owed to just being grateful?
I think my therapist, bless her, she really, really helped me with that, and it took a very long time for me to get, she's like, you don't owe them anything. You have done so much for them. And you cannot walk around with this feeling that you owe them, because it started out with them helping you, but if you look back again, you'll see that you helped them way more than they can ever help you. And even if you didn't, it still doesn't mean that you owe them, because if someone does something for you, that's just it. They should not expect something in return for it. It should just be, I've done this for you.
Yeah, I mean, I would have said they owed you significantly from that story. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that story. I know you've learned a lot of financial lessons from that, and you share that with other people. Is that correct now?
I do. So for a very long time, also partially because I said I didn't want to be poor, I felt like I needed to pull people along because so many people were living paycheck to paycheck. So for many years, I have been teaching people about how to invest and just overall total financial wellness. Also, because I had bad credit, I was able to use that as a way to teach people how to build credit and how to stay afloat if they do have bad credit. So right now, what I do is I teach women how to grow their wealth and become financially free. And so I have a website called Personal Wealth Roadmap, where people can go to and get a lot of financial information. I also have a YouTube channel called Grow Your Wealth TV, and there I provide videos on different things that people can do to grow their wealth, basically, stay out of debt, reduce their debt, increase their credit, and things like that. And I do teach people how to invest in the stock market, as well as I have small group coaching where I teach from A to Z, wherever you are on your journey in terms of your personal finance, that you can get that help so that you don't have to stay stuck in a situation where you're in constant debt.
That's great. So what was the best website to reach you, or email to reach you, if you want to include?
So my website is personalwealthroadmap.com. I'm also on Facebook using the same name, Personal Wealth Roadmap, and or actually Your Personal Wealth Roadmap on Facebook as well. And then YouTube is Grow Your Wealth TV. So it could be any of those three. I can send you the link if that would be helpful for people.
Yeah, send me the link and I'll include it in the description as
Yeah,
well so people can find it.
absolutely. Yes, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tanya, for sharing your story with us today. And sometimes it takes a while to break up with fear, and others fears I haven't broken up with,
Yeah.
that I can let go of too. And thank you. I believe this can help someone that
I
hears.
really hope it does. I mean, I don't talk about this a lot, but I feel like for someone going through a struggle, and it doesn't have to be my journey, right? But it could be a similar story where they can really realize that you just gotta let go, stand up, and just say, this is what I need, and really take charge of your life. Because if not, people will take charge of your life for you.
Yes. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your story. I so appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. This was great.
Absolutely.